Hello, everyone. Nice to see many people coming to listen to my presentation. It's very good to be here. I would like to thank, first of all, those who organized for me to come here. It was Saliu, representing Kosovo Swedish Institute, and of course, Kosovo Academy. I'm basing my speech on my documentation from 1998 to 99. During 18 months, 10,600 children, women, and men were killed randomly and put in 400 mass graves. So that's the base for my documentation or my speech. History was my favorite subject in school back in the 1940s. So I'm an old man. So there was no internet at that time. Today, I could easily find internet information about Kosovo Academy, first established in 1975. Over the years in Kosovo and Serbia, I have read some Albanian and Balkan history. I came across the word besa in Albanian as something sacred and represented an Albanian virtue. For us Norwegians, we have something similar. A word is a word. If you do a contract with someone, the contract should hold. During my lecture now, I may have a digression or two. You know, digression is an act of deviating from the main subject matter in speaking. So here you have my first digression. The Albanians in the Balkans, unlike many people in Europe, are said to have taken care of the Jews on the run from German Nazi persecution during Second World War from 1938 to 45. In Scandinavia, only the Danish and the Swedish people took care of the Jews on the run. I'm sorry I have to use water much because I am very dry mouth. I don't know why, but it's dry. The Scandinavian, the Danish and the Swedish people took care of the Jews on the run. The Norwegian, my people, they did the opposite. The local Norwegian police gathered Jews in secret planned actions Early in the morning, all Jews were gathered and put on a boat to Auschwitz concentration camp. On 25th and 26th November 1942, more than 750 were sent, and only 26 came back alive after the war. This story is a heavy historical burden for Norway. Now over to the subject I have started on. I call it the intervention that turned the tide in Kosovo. If NATO had not intervened in March 1999 and subjected former Yugoslavia to an extensive air bombing over 78 days, I think most of Kosovo Albanian population would probably have been refugees all over Europe and in the rest of the world. And Kosovo would have remained as part of Serbia in the rest of Yugoslavia. There is a definition. In 1948, UN approved the definition to cover the term genocide. The United Nations Genocide Convention defines genocide as any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. So Lirak will help me because my voice is terrible. So he will read those definitions.
Killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. In 1998, the ICTR, International Crime Tribunal, Rwanda, set the important precedent that systematic rape is in fact a crime of genocide.
The international, legal, and political community have, for some reasons, avoided using the term genocide when it comes to crimes committed in Kosovo in 1998-99, over 18 months, where 10,600 unarmed civilians were deliberately hunted down and murdered. They were murdered. I lost my line. Yeah. And around half of the Albanian population was deported and forcibly transferred out of Kosovo. My documentation presented in 2010, where you could find it on this Truth Commission webpage, clearly shows that genocide was committed. The asymmetric warfare launched by Yugoslavian army and the Serbs in Kosovo under the Milosevic regime from 98 to 99 resulted in these indictments and sentences.
On 26th of February 2009, the following former police and military officials of the former Yugoslavia and Serbia were convicted by Trial Chamber 3 of the Tribunal for Crimes Against Humanity committed in Kosovo in 1999. Former Yugoslav Deputy Prime Minister Nikola Šajnović, Yugoslav Army General Nebojša Pavković, and Serbian Police General Sreten Lukic were each sentenced to 22 years imprisonment for crimes against humanity and violation of the laws or customs of war. Yugoslav Army General Vladimir Lazarević, the Chief of the General Staff, Dragoljub Ojdanić, were found guilty of aiding and abetting the commission of a number of charges of deportation and forcibly transfer of the ethnic Albanian population of Kosovo, and each sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. The prosecution charged the five with crimes committed during a campaign of terror and violence directed against the ethnic Albanian population of Kosovo in early 1999. Each of the accused was alleged to have participated in a joint criminal enterprise, the purpose of which was to modify the ethnic balance in Kosovo to ensure continued control by the Serbian authorities. The plan was to be executed by criminal means, including deportations, murders, forcibly transfers, and persecution of Kosovo Albanians.
Now we will have figure 5. It's a short video made by Bern, and it shows things that came up under the film The Unidentified, made by Bern's News. A former member of a Jackal group is interviewed about this experience during the war in Kosovo. His testimony not only confirms the tragic, and here you will see.
When we arrived, the signs of destruction were everywhere. It was a fresh crime scene.
To su već u fazi samounifikacije. Sma se sjeća. Ja mislim da taj jedan se sjeća. Izuzetno grozno izgledalo to.
Mi smo to tad zvali.
Okay, yeah, I think it's out, and then we can. Technical problems, okay.
To je znači bez kuća, terena, šuma i tako. Kako vi pripremite te akcije? Akcija naređena, planirana.
Kao poslije džobe, artillerije moj strijer, malo me treba moj policija. Slučaj kad će kombinirati tri tine, pa mi to policija se na vlasi u slavu.
Našli su samo sa shodom da pohapsi nas 10, da kažu to su oni sve uradili. Oni treba da su i NM lici. Da li su oni nešto radili, to mi ne interesuje, a sve NM lici nekada.
Also, this short video shows that the sign of genocide, there are elements there that shows that genocide was taking place. When UNMIK took over control of Kosovo, they had no records of the population or archives that could facilitate the work of setting up lists of dead and missing. Most of the office inventory or technical equipment were gone. The new authorities and others in Kosovo who worked with dead and missing people were very dependent on the lists that were created by international organizations such as the Red Cross, the ICTY, and other NGOs, because 3 different languages were used: English, Albanian, and Serbian. And many of the lists were to some extent deficient. Many who came and reported could not document who they were and whom they represented. Serb military and police and paramilitary forces who participated in the forced expulsion of more than half of the civilian Albanian population took by force all forms of personal ID and other documentation from the population that could prove they belonged in Kosovo. Before I started this project, it was in November 2006, regarding those 400 mass graves. I contacted the Director of Institute of History, Dr. Josef Martinsen, that's the man, and Director of the Archives of Kosovo, Josef Osmani. And asked them what I should do with my plans of doing a book project for those 400 mass graves and those 10,600 people that were found in the mass graves. What should I do? I asked them. Because UN told me there was no use for me to do books and do investigations, because they had all information. And probably they should have done it, because this was 2006, 7 years after the war. But nothing was done about those 400 mass graves. So, and I knew that if I started to run around in Kosovo and ask for information, they will probably say to me, "Who are you? Who are you representing?" Because this was a one-man project. So I asked Bayraktari and Osmani for a written recommendation for this project. And they were very kind and issued a recommendation. And you have it up here on the screen, and Lirak will read it for you.
Recommendation for support of former coordinator of UNHCR project for Kosovo, Mr. Josef Martinsen. We are honored to recommend to institutions and persons of goodwill to help in different ways the author of book Puset e vdekjes në Kosovë, Walls of Death in Kosovo. In realization of his second project, the history of about 400 mass graves in Kosovo. Mr. Josef Martinsen, like in his first book, aims to treat in the scientific and documentary way the destiny of civilian victims, unprotected Albanians from military, police, and paramilitary Serbian forces of criminal Serb regime during the war in Kosovo. Therefore, expressing gratefulness for work and great contribution of this honored author for presentation and reveal of human destinies, we consider with great importance the assistance for implementing this project with multiple values.
With this recommendation, I went around in Kosovo to all international organizations and told them I need information that they were handling. And they were very helpful, most of them. The International Red Cross was probably the organization that supported me with most information concerning people who was missing and dead. But you have the list here, and Lina, read it up, because it's important.
Data sources I used thanks to the recommendation issued by Dr. Yusuf Bayraktar Institute of History and Dr. Yusuf Osmani back in November 2006. International Committee Red Cross Pristina, International Crime Tribunal for Former Yugoslavia, The Hague, Office for Missing Persons Forensics, UNMIC, ULEX, Pristina, Humanitarian Law Center, Belgrade, author Josef Martinsen, research work in Kosovo, International Justice, Human Rights Watch, No Peace Without Justice, International Crisis Group, Reality Demands, Brussels, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Council for Defense of Human Rights and Freedoms, Pristina.
I received no information or help from the government at that time. It was UNMIC. They were running Kosovo. Hadn't it been for 3 families, I would probably have not been able to do this project. It took many years since I was alone. But there were 3 families that I will mention. And the first one was Morina family in Jakova. Then we had the Pakastica family in Pristina. And from 2010, we had Berisha family in Kosovo. Without their participation, I couldn't have come up with 2 books and a film. It wouldn't have been possible. Because I had also a lack of resources, funding for the project. So it went over quite a long time. 10 years almost. Yeah. We have figure 8 here. Already early spring in 1998, Kosovo Albanians were forced to leave their homes and villages due to heavy shelling against their houses and foot soldiers that came in after the shelling and forced the families out on the roads or to the forests on mountains and burned down their houses. The number of registered persons outside Kosovo started already from March 98. And there you see the numbers at every month of people that had to leave Kosovo because of the persecutions that took place. Numbers of refugees displaced from Kosovo from 23rd of March to 9th of June 1999. From March 23, 1999, things escalated dramatically when USA and Britain and NATO started the announced bombing of Rest Yugoslavia, including Serbia and Montenegro. Milosevic declared state of war the 23rd of March, so he could officially use his military system to govern also Kosovo. And the military took official charge of all actions in Kosovo. I will not repeat the numbers, but out of the course of about 4 months, more than 800,000 were forced out of Kosovo. This is information I have from OSCE. You can imagine, during 4 months, more than 800,000 were leaving. It was chaos on the roads and the borders. And there was enormous pressure on the people to have them out of Kosovo. All these things I have in the books, and a lot of more. So if you go on the web page that I showed, you will find all this information. Mass graves found in Serbia with Albanian victims. It was not only 400 mass graves in Kosovo. There were also mass graves in Belgrade and Serbia. And when Milosevic knew that his time was over and he wanted to sort of cover up his actions, his killings, they took up from mass graves in Kosovo, loaded dead people on trucks and drove them over to Serbia and Belgrade. It's a long trip with dead bodies. And there was a lot of them. These places I have mentioned here is Batanica, Petrovo, Peruća, and Raška, which was the last one they discovered back in 2010, more or less at the same time I was presenting my project. And we can have the next picture, please. It's a little bit strange. In Batanica, they had long tunnels that was empty. They used to grow mushrooms there. Can you imagine? Mushrooms in long tunnels, 100 meters long. There they placed dead Albanians from Kosovo in those long tunnels to have them covered, and so no one knew what was in there. And they probably wanted to burn them or whatever. And here was Dr. Ashim Yasuali. He was there and registered those people. I have problems. Yeah. Picture 13, yeah. That was the Raska. And there were, I think, hundreds of dead bodies. I don't know exactly. But they were found 10th of May 2010. Now I came to my last part. It is very strange how time has flown for me since 2010, when I presented my war crimes documentation. For everyone else, also time has clearly flown, except for the raped women. The raped women during the war, especially for the first 423 raped women. If you can take my bag. I have an interesting case for you. This is a case that it's not solved yet, even if it's from 99. You can open it. In order to put focus on this issue, I made a T-shirt so we can try and spread around in order to let people know what was going on back in 99. So you can read it in Albanian. If you take it like this, read it in Albanian for them, so they understand it. It's there. Yeah. Can you read it? Can you read it, please?
Yes, I can read it. Riktheni dinjitetin e premtuar, vendqëndrimin e sigurt dhe të ardhmen më të mirë për 423 viktimat e para të regjistruara të dënuara gjatë luftës. Një vetmi dokumentim ndërkombëtar I krimeve të luftës, 98-99 në Kosovë.
Just after the war, and UNMIK came in and established their sort of rule in Kosovo. They was desperately looking for evidence of war crime committed, and asymmetric warfare was taking place. And there was said to be around 20,000 raped women, at least, they said. I don't know, but I know a little bit of it. So, UNMIK, they asked all those raped women through NGO organization and asked if they could sign a document that was their story, how the rape was committed. And they had to sign the document because it should be public later on. UNMIK wanted to use these documents as evidence in the court later on, EU or UN, you name it. But it was important document for them to have. But when they asked most of those women, the women said, if I sign that document, my life in Kosovo is over. I have to leave if I sign it. But there were 423 that, in a way, didn't have any choice. They had families, children, no money, you name it. It could be a lot of reasons for them to sign. So they signed under the condition that UNMIK and the local government should help them when they came home to their local communities. Because they know when we come home, there will be problems for them. And UNMIK, they agreed. You will have help from us if you sign. So those 423, they signed the document. And do you know what's happened? Nothing. UNMIK suddenly forgot that they had promised these 423 men. They made the contract, official contract, but they didn't follow up. That is the story that is not solved yet for Kosovo. Even if it was UNMIK that started it, Kosovo today have a responsibility for those women. Even after 20 years. For many years, I have written to the governments and ministers, taken up this issue, but they never answer. They didn't bother to answer. Can you imagine? Okay. So, I have a picture here, and you can read.
3 books were written since 2003 by local female writers, and I wonder how many politicians have read these books. Historitë me re, 98-99, of Sanie Gashi, Rëfime tronditëse 2003, Luljeta Selimi, Pa Apology by F. Ramosai, printed by Dugagini.
And now I have my second digression at the end. In religion, prophecy is a message that has been communicated to a person by a supernatural entity. Here, the other night, I got a prophecy like this. There will rest a curse upon Kosovo until the 423 female war victims have got their rightful excuse and compensation. Thank you for listening.
Falenderojmë Zotin Martinsen për këto fakte të mbledhura nga vetë ai dhe të prezantuara para nesh, po gjithashtu gjejmë rastin që ta falenderojmë edhe për punën e bërë gjatë gjithë këtyre viteve. Tani ju ftojmë në një kafe të përbashkët për 15 minuta, pastaj do të rikthehemi për të vazhduar.